All right, thank you everyone for coming in today to the talk, Forging Your Way to Senior Developer. This talk is gonna be about how to make it from the next step from being a mid-developer to a senior developer, and it's really geared towards both developers in the room who might be in that position looking to move forward, but also all the coaches and colleagues that might want to help someone else out get to that position. A little bit about me. My name is Ifat Ribon, and I'm a principal architect at an agency called Launchpad Lab. We're a digital product agency based out of Chicago. I actually started as an apprentice at Launchpad Lab, and I've gone through this incredible journey up to the technical leadership position I'm in today. In today's talk, I'm gonna talk both about the experiences that I went through and apply those to how I grew through those levels, as well as all the conversations I've been able to have over time, both in participating in developing our career ladder at Launchpad, talking to other people in the industry, and other folks like you during this conference. So let's talk a little bit about the map for our journey today. We're gonna start by laying a bit of a foundation so that we have a good guide for the steps we're gonna walk through. From there, we're gonna follow the footsteps of a developer who, when we meet her, she's a mid-developer, but we're gonna see a little bit about how she got there so that we can make sure we understand the foundational skills that are gonna carry you forward. We're gonna take a bit of a rest and pitch a tent for a little bit, reflect on that journey so far, before we plan for the rest of the journey getting all the way to senior. We'll wrap up with a little bit of what might be even beyond that. So to start us off, to have a bit of a guide, we're gonna talk through what we call a growth framework. This growth framework is composed of two dimensions. The first are what we call the three pillars. You've got a technical pillar, a problem-solving pillar, and a leadership pillar. These really represent a set of competencies that developers will build throughout their experiences. The technical pillar is probably the one you're all most familiar with or can understand what that means. That's really understanding things like syntax, writing code, executing features. The problem-solving pillar is a bit more abstract, but it's really about learning patterns and how to approach different kinds of problem sets, recognizing the similarities between them, and then ultimately being able to work in greater and greater ambiguity. Finally, the leadership pillar, or you may consider it more of a stewardship pillar, is around starting to bring back your experiences and sharing those around you. That could come in the form of coaching and mentoring, both receiving and giving, as well as consuming and generating content, as well as working with building, contributing to, or maintaining tools and libraries that help developers make their developers' lives a little bit easier. In addition to the pillars, the second dimension here are the three scales. These scales really, don't think that they're aligned to the pillars, they kind of go across them all. The first being that you're gonna move from a place of familiarity, right? Just kind of learning the language, for example, through proficiency all the way to mastery. You're gonna move along those pillars from a place of dependency, right? Requiring a lot of guidance and coaching and mentoring or structured details to accomplish your work, all the way to a place where maybe you're kind of working with others to being in a place where you're operating in a bit higher autonomy. That doesn't mean you're never getting help again. It just means that you can go ahead and do work, mostly on your own and be strategic about the ways you collaborate with others. And on the final scale, you're gonna move from a place of being more of a consumer of information, receiving a lot of information, to starting to collaborate with others to share that, maybe a bit locally, and then expanding that impact in different ways where you're more in a position to promote information in a variety of ways. So as we continue down this journey, we'll be working on seeing how a developer can level up in each of the pillars and think about how they're really moving up those pillars across each of these scales. So with that, let's meet our developer. Our developer, Andy, again, we're meeting her at mid. She completed a boot camp 2 years ago and got her first junior developer job at a company called Buttercup, a cupcake kit meal delivery service. Andy loves jumping into tasks, figuring things out with her teammates, and learning and growing from those around her. So Let's reflect a little bit on how Andy started her journey as a junior to make sure we're all on the same page. As a junior developer, Andy really started at base camp, right? Sort of at the lower ends of each of the pillars, really living in that area of familiarity with syntax and certain problem sets, working through a lot of guided and structured tasks, and working in a position where she is really just consuming a lot of content. Andy loves reading blog posts, she loves listening to conference talks and things like that, and she's really just trying to soak it all in. As she started to work at Buttercup, she started to build the competencies in each of those pillars. So we'll start with the technical pillar. As a junior developer, Andy was spending a lot of time just getting the feature to work, right? She'd write her code, she'd test it in the console or the web browser, and she'd be like, yes, it works. And then she'd submit a PR, and there'd be all this feedback, and even pretty directive feedback around things like syntax. For instance, Andy might have solved a problem by instantiating an empty array, writing in each loop to fill that array, and then returning the array, and a small comment from a senior developer, you can use map. And here's the links to the docs, right? So over time, receiving that PR feedback, she was able to improve that code quality. Next, Andy was really big on learning the conventions and patterns. For instance, in the Ruby community, spending a lot of time learning Cooter and Rails conventions and ways to think about organizing code, really leveraging on the examples that other people have provided her. Again, some of that might have come from her PRs. Some senior developers might have done some live code reviews where they could actually sort of walk through bigger concepts so that she really started to understand how these pieces fit together. Over time, as she became a mid-developer, she started to recognize how to apply those design principles on her own. And finally, Andy started off with being able to execute very small feature tasks or bug fixes, usually with a lot of details and notes for more experienced developers. As she grew, she was able to handle mid to larger size feature sets, maybe with a little bit less guidance over time, but generally still some instruction from the more experienced developers. So you can see that as Andy became more proficient with Ruby syntax, she practiced common patterns, and she was able to complete larger features, her technical competency grew. All right, moving on to the next pillar, the problem solving. So as a junior developer, Andy spent a lot of time solving the immediate problem at hand. This is obviously very closely related to the getting it to work piece of it. And this is great. You were tasked with a problem and you solved it. And that's exactly what you should be doing. As she started to attend team stands and listen and pay attention to developers around her, she started to be able to build a bigger picture. She started to understand how her features or simple parts of the features really fit in with everyone else's around her. And she started to understand some inner workings there. Additionally, a lot of times when you're so focused in on a feature, a junior developer might miss some common edge cases, or maybe some of you have seen this, they tend to overcomplicate things. For instance, Andy got to work on a feature where she was going to help Buttercup implement a sort of pausing or opt-out feature. Andy thought, that's great, I'm gonna build this really complicated schedule calendar where the user can kind of pick the days they do and do not want it. And she was spending a lot of time spinning her wheels, trying to build this complex form and all these nuances, and she couldn't keep track of them. She sat down with the senior developer, and senior developer said, hey, what if they just let them pause it, come back when they need to unpause it, and simplified a lot of that away. Now, maybe that more specific feature is great and needed, but she can grow into that over time and use the people around her to develop that and understand that in a more simple way. So with that, she started to see that there are a lot of types of problems or feature sets, right? Common problems that developers work with include running background jobs or asynchronous work, or understanding how data flows between places, such as import flows or even export flows. She started to see and recognize these problems, and over time, she could leverage solutions that either she had already used in a previous feature, or start to pick up on how the developers around her were doing that. All right, so Andy's growing up. She was exposed to multiple problem sets, and she learned how to use strategies for solving them, and she learned how to ask better questions and understand how her work really fit into the broader picture. Finally, under the leadership pillar, as a junior dev, you're pairing a lot with more experienced devs, and you're often the parry in the situation, the side of the table where you're more receiving the information. Now, a great pairing session can include really great activities such as letting the pairee or more junior drive so they can kind of build that muscle memory and internalize. But at the end of the day, they're kind of receiving a lot of guidance and expertise from the people they're working with. As Andy grew, she started finding herself pairing with her peers. As she neared mid, she started to pair with other mid developers around here because she might have just solved a problem or learned a new convention that med just simply hadn't been exposed to yet. And now she got to be in the driver's seat to explain that and teach that to them and bring the benefit of the fact that she had just learned that. She knew what it was like to be in the position of having gone from not knowing to knowing it very recently. Additionally, Andy was in a place of consuming content. I've been touching on this a lot. For what it's worth, consuming content happens at all levels, but at this stage, you're really just a vessel for more and more information. Like I said, Andy loved tutorials to learn new things. She loved reading blog posts. She loved attending conference talks or listening to them later. And as she started to gain reps on all the other activities we talked about, she started being able to generate some of her own content. I firmly believe that at any level, you can be generating content. You've always just learned something that someone else doesn't know, and there's always a way to promote that. At Launchpad, we do a lot of lunch and learns and what we call dev committee presentations. It's a great way for developers of all levels to show off something that they just learned. You can also write blog posts or even submit a conference talk at any level. And lastly, Andy was doing a lot of spending time just learning the common tools and libraries. And that includes both the internal tools that our company was using, as well as some of the common gems that a lot of folks use. For example, Buttercup has an internal tool called Fezzik, and it's Buttercup's implementation of strong parameters with a couple extra features. As Andy got more reps with that, she started to become intrigued by some of the things she noticed about it. She took a look at the issues and ended up opening several PRs to be able to address those issues. And again, those issues can be of any size or complexity, as simple as a README update to make it more clear for someone to know how to use the gem, or updating a flaky test for a feature that was otherwise correct, but was lacking extensibility because we didn't know if it could be updated safely. So once again, we see Andy starting to contribute back to tools, generating content, and collaborating with her peers in a way where she could start to embark on knowledge sharing. All right, let's just take a minute, a midday rest, if you will, and reflect on the journey Andy has taken. She's done a lot of great work. She's leveled up her technical proficiency, she's improved her problem-solving skills and pattern recognition, and she started to contribute back and engage with the company and the people in the community around her and really be promoting back some of that information. Now, I will point out that obviously we walk through each pillar here in sort of a linear fashion. It's not really like that, right? As you get more experiences, these pillars are actually going to grow sort of in different spikes or at different times, and sometimes they even might go back down a little bit, it seems like, when you're learning something brand new in a space. But generally speaking, from junior to mid, you're able to really land on a lot of the activities and opportunities that were described here. A journey very similar to Andy's. So you might be thinking, what about those skills? Ifat, you talked about those skills. So just want to reiterate that as far as the skills go, we've seen examples of all of this, right? For instance, we saw how Andy increased her proficiency of just sort of knowing general Ruby terms to being able to use more elegant code. We learned how she was able to move from a place of high structure and guidance to working a little bit more on her own and less guidance. And finally, we saw how she was able to move from a place of only being a receptor of content to starting to contribute back. Whew, well, that's a lot. So now we gotta think about what's next. Ostensibly the reason most of you came here. So looking forward, we have another leg of this journey. And for some of you, this may feel daunting. The air is getting a little lighter, the peak's getting a little closer, things are starting to get a little hairy from your perspective. I just wanna say right now that the reason we just went through that journey from junior to mid is so that you can see how all those foundations and skill sets that you've worked on, they're just the same going forward. Spoiler alert, I know. So pay attention to that on how you're leveraging the things you might have already done, and really just understanding how really they're just growing in size or impact. All right, you guys ready? Let's go. All right, we're gonna follow the same thing. So the technical pillar here. When we left Andy, she was really improving her code quality. She was starting to see some really elegant code. She wasn't using each with empty arrays anymore, although maybe there's a use case, don't quote me on that. And she was getting to a place where she was actually really efficient with her code. And I use the word efficient because it actually, to me, it means a few things. Not only is she literally getting faster because she's building a lot of that muscle memory, but she's understanding things like performance considerations. Not all methods are created equal. And again, she's learning that a lot from the content she's consuming. She's also starting to really dig into gems and see how other gems use practices and patterns that either she has seen before or hasn't. For instance, metaprogramming or other ways to really apply the Ruby language in this example. Andy previously had been able to apply design principles really well. She really is able to nail those. Looking forward, Andy has the opportunity to start to create some of her own. And just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that anyone's creating a brand new paradigm. You certainly might. But the idea here is that as you level up, you start to realize that there isn't a right or wrong answer in code, not even in Rails with convention over configuration. The key is that you're doing what's best for you and your team and answering one simple question. Can a future developer work with this? And if so, fantastic. I will caveat that it's based on the information at hand. That information could change, and that's okay. So when I say creating new patterns, I really mean thinking intentionally about the way you want to use the language and technology around you in a way that's going to fit the needs that you're at. And lastly here, Andy was starting to own those larger features, maybe even leading them a little bit. As she grows in her technical proficiency, she'll be able to be in a place where she can own the more complicated features, right? Or do things like create a proof of concept, or at Launchpad we call them spikes. This requires a high degree of technical competency because it means that you are leveraging all the code you know so you can be quick and be able to throw away a lot of code. You're also going to be able to code in a way that'll allow you to uncover additional unknowns faster that way and be able to come to a conclusion faster without spinning your wheels. So we can see that with improving that technical mastery by learning the language better, improving your speed and quality and the depths of how those pieces fit together, you can achieve sort of that mastery level of technical competency. All right, bear with me, problem-solving pillar. You all know where we're going at this point. So being able to work with others and being able to see that larger picture is really helpful. As you grow and develop, you might find yourself being able to be in a position where you can actually receive a larger picture and break it down for others. Being able to sequence work or organize the features in a way that's going to allow others to work efficiently, yourself or others to work efficiently, and or compete against other priorities, such as delivering high impact to the client. Maybe you want to work on the riskiest feature first because there's so much to uncover there and you want to make sure you have time for it. Maybe you want to work on authentication because you've done it 100 times, but the client's going to be wowed that they can log in, right? So being able to start to see a lot of those patterns over time will help you make greater decisions like that. Additionally, moving forward from de-risking with really great questions, you're going to be getting to a place where you're starting to reduce unknown unknowns. This is obviously very difficult. If those of you who may not be familiar, there's sort of a concept of having known knowns, right? Very articulate, explicit topics or instructions. There's sort of known unknowns. It's hey, we don't really know about that, but we kind of have an idea and know the direction we need to go to reduce that. And then there's unknown unknowns. The things that when you hit them, you say, how could we have ever anticipated that? Turns out as you grow, you can start to see those a little bit faster. And the unknowns for you start to reduce. You can design strategies to figure those out. For example, you might have a client where you're being tasked with rebuilding a legacy system, but there's still an element of that system, a custom CRM, that your team still has to integrate with. You don't know anything about that custom CRM. You kind of don't even know where to start to ask questions. This is where you can take a step back and design a strategy for yourself. First, ask yourself, what do I know? Remember, you know a whole lot. You've seen a lot of things. You've seen a lot of experiences. Second question you might ask yourself is, well, what do I need? How would I build it if I didn't have to rely on an existing system? If you walk through those strategies like that, you can start to build a game plan for how you might start to uncover the unknowns that you didn't even know were unknown unknowns. And finally, as far as being able to reuse solutions to common patterns, right? You've seen one import flow, maybe you've seen them all in the work that you're doing. You start to get to a place where you can identify that it was an import flow to begin with. Someone might say, hey, I need data to move from here to here. And no one said anything about importing CSVs or anything like that. But you were like, hey, that sounds like an import problem. So you get to be in this place where things aren't named, but you have these mental models to be able to describe them. So again, if you're breaking down the problems with targeted questions, you're designing strategies to reduce unknown unknowns, and you're leveraging past experiences, you can continue to build that problem-solving competency. All right, last one. So on the leadership side, we left Andy with pairing with some of our peers. Obviously, as you grow and continue to build your wealth of expertise, you find yourself coaching and mentoring across all levels. Maybe more obviously, you're starting to really be a coach and a mentor for other junior devs. But don't forget that idea of collaborating with peers can happen at any point. The foundation still stands that she may be collaborating with another senior and you've kind of figured something out or built an expertise that senior doesn't have, and now you can share that with them. As well as going from creating content maybe a little bit intermittently, maybe it's kind of all over the place as you're getting all these variety of experiences, you might find yourself in a position where you're actually defining thought leadership and strategy, whether that's for yourself, maybe you want to start a regular series where you're focusing on one topic that you're going deep in, or maybe for your company where you're trying to foster an environment in which other developers are contributing their knowledge, or simply for your broader community and being more engaged in that way. Maybe you're becoming a more regular speaker at talks as you get to know the community and identify the things that you'd like to share. And finally, as far as maybe contributing to developer tools and processes, maybe you start writing your own tools or becoming a maintainer where you're actually soliciting and taking in feedback from the broader community, which is no easy task. Again, I want to stress, especially in this leadership pillar, all of these activities can happen at any level. These are just examples of how you're growing your impact across each of these activities. So with that, of course, as you champion more ownership and promotion of developer tools, you're generating and driving content for those around you, and you're coaching and mentoring others, you're continuing to flex that leadership pillar. All right. That still feels a lot, or does it feel less daunting? I hope it feels less daunting as you're climbing upwards, as you're relying on the foundations you've already set for yourself and reflecting on the great work that you've done. As you look forward, you're gonna have the ability to recognize, wow, I really understand how Rails made that feature. That's such a fun feeling, right? Or you're really gonna be able to anticipate new problems and solutions. A mid-developer might come to you and say something and you're like, oh, but have you thought about that? Do you know how fun it is to tell someone, have you thought about that? And guess what? They will forever think about that. And lastly, you're going to have the opportunity to expand your impact, sharing with the more people around you about the journey you've been on and what you're interested in. So again, reaching that level of mastery, becoming more autonomous. Again, it doesn't mean not working with others. It just means being able to operate independently with a certain spread of work or being able to drive or direct work, as well as being in a position to promote a broader strategy around knowledge sharing. So I hope you all can see that the path is bright, all the views you have ahead of you, all the amazing opportunities you can uncover as you continue on your growth journey. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I'm really looking forward to reaching senior developer, but that's not the top of the mountain for me. There's a peak even further. There's a flag I'm seeing up there. It's a little blurry though. I'd like to hear more. So let's talk a little bit about what might come after senior developer. So this space is often called or referred to by companies as a technical leadership path. And as you grow, and something you might have noticed as you were listening to each of the examples is that people often have very specific passions or interests across each of those pillars, and might also have certain strengths and skill sets that allows them to even level up on those. To no one's surprise, those things tend to intersect. You tend to be good at things that you like, and you tend to like the things that you're good at. Lean into that. By no means are you expected to do all of those things. If anything, this was meant to present a way to achieve the goals that you have along the paths that you'd like to follow. Now, if you'd like to progress beyond that, the technical leadership path really kind of ends up doing that for you. These paths, these 3 paths up here, tend to become more distinct and coincidentally, or not very coincidentally, tend to align to the 3 pillars, right? You've got this path of really becoming that technical expert. A lot of companies, this may be reflected as continuing to be an individual contributor, or IC, whether that's owning features or flexing in on projects, or at other companies, they may use the title staff. Spoiler, the industry does not have standard terms, but generally speaking, staff tends to be very high level of technical mastery and contributing in a lot of ways. Or you might be really interested in that problem-solving pillar. How can I take a big abstract problem and be able to provide guidance and solutions in a way for other people to execute on those? That's what I do at Launchpad, Principal Architect. So there's titles like that, as well as Solutions Engineer. You tend to work in high ambiguity and very low structure, and have to very quickly be able to ask good questions, leverage some pattern matching, and be able to come up with recommendations for tech strategy, how to break down feature work, or what the team makeup might look like. And finally, if the leadership stewardship pillar really piques your interest, there's a lot of roles and opportunities for that. You may be a team lead, either more at the project level, so being a lead dev, some companies call it that, where you're kind of spending a lot of time on that people management, making sure that the team is operating efficiently, but you're bringing your technical expertise to be able to support that. Or you may formally be in the position of engineering manager, where you're really dedicating your time to either developing or a career ladder or supporting the devs that align to you along that career ladder and take them on the journey that we just saw today. Now, as I've been saying, I want to stress that just because you're going down one path doesn't mean the other path is blocked off. In reality, all these things do continue to intersect with each other. For instance, if you'd like to continue down the IC path, that doesn't mean that you might not ever coach or collaborate with other devs of different levels. You might still need to flex those skills or enjoy flexing those skills, and you can find ways to do that. As the principal architect level, I'm still flexing on technical skills in the way of spikes and things like that. Or as an engineering manager, you might really be leaning on your problem-solving skills as the team is running into an issue with velocity, and you've got to find the ways that that team can ramp back up. All right, that brings us to the end of the journey. I want to say thank you so much to all of you for attending today. I love talking about this stuff, so happy to talk more at any time. We've got some contact information there, and yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. Happy to take questions live. Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic question. And if you couldn't hear that, the question, if I understood it correctly, is a lot of times, as we touch on the fact that you only have so many hours in a day, so one pillar, as you grow one pillar, it might be at the expense of others. And for a lot of us in the community, people that are less represented in tech, a lot of times we end up filling gaps in pillars that maybe wouldn't have been originally our choice, taking away some time from a pillar we want to grow in. For example, spending time on advocacy under leadership pillar and maybe feeling like we're not spending as much time on the technical pillar. So guidance for how you can kind of balance that. Yeah, speaking off the cuff, I've been in this position for sure. And one of the things that I really, really would lean on is that pattern matching ability. And what that really means to me is the skills that you're developing in supporting advocacy or trying to move through the pay gap. You might be doing things like talking to a lot of people and asking good questions, right? And you're kind of working those other skills. As you go back to your technical work, you might start to ask yourself the same questions. Well, what do I need to go find out to reach this goal that I'm getting to? What's the sort of the path of least resistance? Do I need to lean into a tutorial, or turns out I'm really good at listening to other people, and I'd rather have someone kind of like do a live pairing session with me. I know that's not like the best answer because you're right, you have to prioritize your time, but I think finding the ways in which you are excelling in a certain pillar and recognizing how you can apply those same things in another pillar hopefully allows you to be more efficient with that time. Yeah, I hope that helps. I'm happy to kind of maybe brainstorm some more ideas with you. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.